Pistol. It'll be Robinson, and he finds a running lane. What a sweet move to the second level and beyond. Touchdown, Bijan Robinson.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
Now again to Gibbs with more room to roam. Another first down and a touchdown.
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
UCLA looking to go up 2 scores, and Zach Charbonnet, a big hole, bounces it to the outside. Charbonnet, stutter step, he's in.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
Goes down to the 3-yard line, A-Chain.
And A-Chain's got an opening. He's got world-class speed. He's gone. A-Chain takes it coast to coast. Touchdown, Aggies.
Have you subscribed to our YouTube channel? Search 365 Sports on YouTube. Brought to you by TFNB, your bank for life.
Miller has a little crease, has a block on the edge. Look out, Kendall Miller in a foot race. They won't catch him. And the Frogs with the first touchdown tonight, 75 yards.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
And here we go, Sikkim 365 Radio, 365 Sports. I'm David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak right here in the studio today on this Friday, January the 20th. Behind us, behind Paul's right shoulder, is a helmet that was delivered to us that is a Texas Tech full, the regular helmet signed by head coach Joey McGuire. Sent that to us, 365 Sports. We have some Tech fans that do watch the show, and so that is in the background behind Paul's right shoulder. Good afternoon. Dennis Dodd will join us. CBS Sports had an interesting story about the Big 12 and the possibility of, if in fact Oklahoma, Texas leave early, it will put money back in the pocket of the original 8 who are staying in the Big 12. Also, Kendall Briles officially, finally introduced as far as a graphic of Kendall and his family on a jet on their way, I'm sure, to Fort Worth. Welcome, Coach Kendall Briles. He's the associate head coach. He's the offensive coordinator, and he's also the quarterback's coach. This graphic received a ton of play. Most of it appeared to be negative about the fact that they're almost trying to shield something here by putting the family in the front. Everyone has their own opinion. Obviously, this was the first time a day after he was announced as being hired as their coach to TCU.
One of the things that's kind of bothered me about the discourse around Kendall Briles is the lack of admittance by TCU fans that their school isn't perfect. No school is perfect. I've read several different columns where there are people who write for, they're more fan columns, but like it's kind of the prevailing sentiment of they believe that their school, and this is, you can put this quote to any university. My university does it right. We don't let the bad guys play. We have discipline. We, take care of business. We don't let these things get out of hand. The other school, they do that. But my school doesn't. And let me just tell you that whether you're Baylor, TCU, USC, UCLA, like whatever rivalry you want to play or whatever school you want to say, like, oh, Michigan does it wrong, but Ohio State does it right. All of you've got your crap. Everybody has their crap. It all happens. It's human nature. You have these big, gigantic institutions. You have big football teams. You have people who are there. You have varying levels of discipline, varying levels of what coaches will let get by or put up with or get into the system. And so to try to morally equivocate why yours is better than the other one, just there by the grace of God go you for the time that you're talking about. And at the time when Kendall Briles was at Baylor, that was when Gary Patterson was at TCU, and to what extent you believe he was doing it right, he had his problems as well. I mean, there was Kevontae Turpin in a situation that guy's a Pro Bowler. I said even before the show, he's an All-Pro. He's a Pro Bowler. But Kevontae Turpin, he and the coaching staff handled that situation so terribly that the details of it I don't want to get into because I'll just ramble on forever. You had Casey Paha, you had Trevon Boykin, you had Devontae Fields, you had 4 different players get in trouble for something. Is that Gary Patterson's fault? No, those guys made their own choices and moved on down the line, but he didn't handle all those situations, with absolute Judge Dredd, like, boom, you're guilty, you're gone. Every one of them got chances and moved through the system one way or the other. So, and if you want to play this game for any university, we can do it. Tell me where you went. I'll find the stuff that bad happened there because it happens everywhere. And maybe just move past it because, the old saying is you point one finger, you got 4 pointing back at yourself. That's kind of where you're sitting at, and that's the business of college athletics.
Yeah, well, first of all, shout out to Coach McGuire for the helmet. We do appreciate that. Wreck 'em. Shout out to Deion as well for his little cameo there in the background by the helmet. So shout out to Primetime. Certainly going back to the names that you rattled off there, there was a stretch where TCU was finding as much trouble as anybody, but that school down south, as Gary Patterson deflected to, was just having more of the headlines, and so TCU didn't have much of a microscope on them, but they had their little run there during that same time period where they had plenty going on, and you just didn't probably hear about it nearly as much because of the differences in coverage. And so they were very fortunate in that regard. As far as the Kendall Briles thing goes, this whole handling of it by TCU is it's so laughable. It's very clear what they're doing and trying to do, and everybody sees through it. Most teams would have had a graphic out with Kendall Briles, and he would have been photoshopped from like an Arkansas picture last year in a TCU vest and whatever else, and it would have said welcome at whatever his Coach KB or whatever his Twitter handle is, and that's how most of them are. And I don't care enough to go through TCU's like hiring tweets to see how they handle it exactly every time, but that's generally how it kind of goes. Never really ever do I think I've seen like the full-blown family portrait and no handle attached to it, and that was intentional too, and as it's been pointed out. And yet, if you look at the picture, he's like the last person you notice because he's in the side and to the back compared to the family who's like all up in the front of it, and it's just laughable because everybody knows exactly what they're doing here. Everybody knows why there wasn't some big announcement yesterday. Everybody knows why there's a family portrait as opposed to, just welcome Kendall. It's welcome Kendall Briles and family. And they can say that it's just the cordial thing to do, but we all know different, TC. We all know better than that. We all know what's going on. We all know that, people are going to have their opinions and that you don't really want to attract as many of those opinions, although that's, seemingly impossible because even the tweet that didn't have the tag and didn't try to, use the usual algorithm that would get it even more seen, got seen by plenty of people because, people were waiting for this to drop because of the way it was handled the last couple of days. But, yeah, I know there's plenty of TCU fans who have sworn off or say they're not going to care as much or they're upset about it or whatever. And to those people, kudos to you. To those who say, like, I don't care, just win football games. Every fan base has those people. And so, do your thing as well, I guess. I'm not going to sit up here and say, like some other people, that Kendall Briles deserves this and he deserves that and all that. Because to me, this isn't about him. For me, it isn't. It's about TCU's handling of this and just the way that it seemingly went down and just the hypocrisy of it all. That's what is the big thing to me, is just the hypocrisy, given the way he was talked about and others were talked about, and now you look around and there's one school that has a growing number of those guys, and it happens to be the school that probably talked the most. But people do change. He's been around in a lot of spots, like I said the other day, and so as far as them hiring him, just on the surface, like I said a couple days ago, okay, good football coach, good hire, fills your vacancy, and it makes sense. Now, as far as like just the overall look of it, yeah, it seems dirty. It seems really dirty. It seems hypocritical, and I can see where some TCU fans would be upset by it.
Well, he's at TCU. He and the family, the picture, and there was a lot of countdown. How come you haven't shown a picture? How come you haven't made it official? It's official now. People can think of it whatever they want moving forward. He is now the associate head coach, offensive coordinator, and quarterbacks coach at TCU. And we'll see how this moves on. I'll tell you what TCU did. They took some blowback, and they didn't let it affect their decision. And that doesn't mean that they're any special or whatever, but they did not allow that to affect the decision. Sonny Dykes was committed to this. He convinced the AD of it. The university decided, okay, let's give this a shot. And now Kendall Briles is at TCU.
I mean, I give them credit for that, I guess, but it's also not necessarily admirable, So, yeah, I mean, they didn't do what the Cleveland Browns did and cave to the social media mob, so I do give them credit for that.
Or Hamilton Tiger
They're better than
Cats.
a CFL team who couldn't withstand probably, 10 people tweeting at them or whatever it was. I mean, there's been professional organizations that caved under Twitter mentions, and so, yeah, kudos to TCU for not doing that. But, it's an interesting hire because of the back history, and it's a good hire on paper. Is it worth all of the hoopla in the end? I think that's what we all really want to know, and that's what we'll all wait and see. But, yeah, I mean, like I said, it's not to me about them hiring Kendall Briles. It's just the whole backstory behind it that makes it so weird. And then, the handling of it the past couple of days of, waiting on the graphic, and then you finally see it this morning, and it's like the full-blown fan. Like, come on, dude. We know exactly what you're doing. Social media team. Job well done, I guess. I guess that's what you had to do, but it is pretty silly.
A social media team that didn't make the hire, that was told, okay,
right.
How can we try to at least soften the blow just a little bit? Now, on the same day that he is introduced officially with the graphic from TCU football, Michigan did not waste any time. They have fired co-offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach Matt Weiss. He was involved, at least the accusations about the criminal activity on a computer, and he's gone. And consistent with university policy from their AD, we have no further comment on this personnel matter. They acted quickly.
Yeah, and we didn't even know what the computer crime he's specifically being investigated for is, other than it's a computer crime, which leaves a spider web of things that he could be involved in. So whatever details Michigan found out about it didn't feel like it was worth keeping him on to weather the storm, and has made the move. And I think that in most cases it's probably better for you to do this than – wait for the due process of the law to play out, because one, that takes a long time, and two, even if he is innocent, then he's got to spend all this time proving his innocence. He's not going to be completely committed to you, and that's on the absolute brightest side of he's fallen into some grand conspiracy, which I don't know why that would fall to the Michigan co-offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach, but outside of it, most schools just need to make these moves faster, because it's just on the. I
don't know if they could have acted much faster.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Or
do what Michigan did and just make the move as fast as you can and move on, because waiting it out really does you no good. And then if you get a wrongful termination suit on the back end, then that's probably going to cost you less money than it would to have just let him go and deal with his problems.
Well, we'll see how this one works out. Of course, Michigan, Paul, you had it. In fact, yesterday, Pat Forty, SI.com, after you had mentioned the top 5 most difficult, tumultuous off seasons, he had a story about Michigan, Jim Harbaugh, and, of course, even the coach in Weiss as well. All right, Jaden Rashada. He has been released from his national letter of intent to Florida. This was a matter of time. This was just going to happen. It was a matter of, was it going to be today, this weekend, next week? He has been released. We know about what is the mess that was his NIL agreement or whatever that was. How quickly do you think somebody will sign him to enter wherever they're going to play, wherever he's going to play next? You think his phone blew up pretty quickly? Or do they not want to be any part of this?
I think there's probably some that know that they can't afford to be, even though It'll probably be cheaper than $13 million because clearly that's tough to come up with.
Always has been.
But, I mean, I could have told you that just in general about life, not even regarding this situation. But, I mean, there will be people who call him right back. I'm curious about Miami. It's John Rees, right, Craig? That's the LifeLock guy?
Sure, yeah.
So in one of the columns I read about Jaden Rashada, somebody reached out to him and asked him what he thought because he was involved in trying to get Jaden Rashada locked and loaded into Miami. And when it all fell apart, he said, look, it's clear that the people in this collective don't really know how to run a business or how to do this, which – I mean, I guess you can say he's better at that than they are. But the tone I got from him is he was a little miffed that it got to this point with Miami and that Rashada left. So I do think that Mario Cristobal, based on the quarterback they signed, which is a guy who's rated much lower than Jaden Rashada, would get back into it. But I think there'll be some people that you wouldn't even expect will get in it because, they never thought they had a shot or there's a new coach or, why not? Why not just give a call to this guy if he might be interested in it? And, there's some teams that'll be out of it. Like Ole Miss was in on him before. Well, I think with Walker Howard, that kind of takes them out of Jaden Rashada now. And A&M was in on Jaden Rashada, but they signed Marcel Reed. So I would think that takes them out of it because you've got people on that same exact level with the same exact eligibility left, more or less. So I don't know if you'd want to, crowd up the room like that.
I mean, yeah, he'll have people talking to him, of course. I mean, he's a big-time quarterback. If he's worth $13 million in the eye of one school, then absolutely there's going to be others that are going to come calling. But like Paul said, there's a lot of things that have happened since then. You've hired new coaches. You've hired new assistants. You've picked up other commitments and signed other guys now at this point. There's another signing day coming up here pretty soon, but in comparison to the first one, it's wildly quieter. And I know there's, still some big decisions to be made, but most of the quarterbacks are taken at this point. So, I would imagine that as we get closer to spring ball and get on the other side of it, that there will be plenty of needs for quarterbacks, and he'll be right there near the top of the list so long as he and his people aren't enough of a deterrence or their demands or whatever they may be looking for, because he's obviously had big money thrown at him, not real money, but money thrown at him figuratively. And I think that probably skews your expectations a little bit about what you think you're worth or what you're going to be expecting the next go-around. So we'll see, but there will certainly be a demand. Whether or not it's, the juice is worth the squeeze, ultimately, I'm sure there will be some schools that are like, yeah, no, we'll just go a different direction and not worry about this. But, there probably will be somebody out there that's just desperate enough or has got enough money in the collective or just enough of a need at quarterback that, they feel like this guy can be the difference maker, and they'll throw, 6 figures or whatever it is at him. But certainly anybody would be – I think anybody throwing 7 figures at any prospect is just stupid. But, I mean, I can get it if it's like a multi-year deal. Even then, I feel like that's stretching it a little bit. But he'll find a landing spot. There's no doubt. But I am also very curious to see where that could be and what that NIL ends up ultimately looking like.
Dennis Dodd will join us here momentarily. A couple more headlines to get to before our first break. Cormani McLean from Lakeland, Florida. He is committed to Deion Sanders in Colorado. They now have the 2 5-star cornerbacks on their roster, or he will be soon. This was a bunch of, wow, yesterday evening as the day went on. Cormani, I saw some highlights of him. Tall, lanky, fast, rangy, all the words you'd want. And one of the highest, if not the highest ranked, depending on who you talk to, highest ranked player in the country. One of the top, let's just say top 2 or 3.
Yeah, he's a big-time recruit. They compare him with Travis Hunter now, who was last year's big-time recruit, was at Jackson State, now followed Deion to Colorado. It should be formidable, and, literally no coach in the country will be shocked year after year when the best cornerback prospects go to play for Deion Sanders. It's one of those things that Deion has something on every single one of them. Every single coach in the country, Deion Sanders, especially when it comes to cornerbacks, Deion Sanders has a trump card that they don't have. It's that he is Deion Sanders.
Yeah, I mean, it's huge for Colorado. It's a big boost for them. There's definitely some good vibes rolling through Boulder right now. Just the energy and excitement building up for next season. It could be an ugly season on paper. I mean, looking at their schedule, I mean, there's not a guarantee that they're going to a bowl game in year number one. And so, that'll be interesting to see how expectations kind of grow or fluctuate, this first year and sort of how they're laid out and what they want to see, through these first 2-3 years of his tenure. And, especially when there's no denying that if he has a little bit of success, he'll probably be getting a lot of phone calls. I mean, Deion's a guy that you see him landing these types of players, and that can't help but open the eyes to not only Colorado fans and college football fans, but administrators got to be going, man, he's got a lot of marketing power. He's got a lot of marketing draw. He can recruit well. And so, the only piece that's a question is, okay, can he win? And he's won everywhere else. But now let's see if he wins at Colorado and see how dug in he gets there. But certainly he's off to an exciting start. And to land, Cormani McLean's a huge deal. He had the little flip music going in the video that he posted, which I thought was a fun touch. Being from Texas. But, yeah, very impressed, not surprised, obviously, with it being, that type of player, as you're mentioning, Paul, a defensive back. Like, who else would you rather play for? I mean, it just seems like a no-brainer, or a two-way guy like a Travis Hunter. I mean, those guys just make sense. So, yeah, big-time get for Deion. And, I think that there are some people who worry about overexposure. But, hey, man, if you're flipping five-star recruits, then you demand exposure in that way. And so, yeah, he's putting the lights on him by getting a big-time player. And we'll see, what else he can do to fill out the rest of that Colorado roster. But very intriguing storyline, to be sure.
All right, we will have Dennis Dodd from CBS Sports yesterday. I think this was yesterday evening. Story was early exits for Texas and Oklahoma could help Big 12 repay members that agreed to dilute revenue upon the expansion. In other words, when the Texas-Oklahoma story broke and then the Big 12 added 4, they wanted to make sure that networks weren't going to pay extra money, so each of the 8 had to at least say, okay, we'll give a little bit here with some of the revenue to give to the 4 incoming schools. Now it appears some of what has been, at least for now, given to the incoming 4 will be reimbursed with any of the fees from Texas and Oklahoma, which makes a lot of sense since those were the original 8 attached to the Big 12 Conference, or at least the most recent Big 12 Conference. Dennis Dodd today, Grayson Grundhafer on Baylor and recruiting. Plus, we'll discuss about what Deion's doing in Colorado since he follows that very, very well. And then on top of that, Max Olson, theathletic.com, John McLean, Paul's Top 5. This is 365 Sports.
Richard Carr, Buick GMC Cadillac, they are the people that you can count on for great customer service, for new vehicles, and also for pre-owned vehicles as well. And as I've had to get my car into the shop a couple of different times over the last year, Richard Carr has been the people that I have counted on as well for fix-ups and for fixing issues that came with a couple of different fender bender dings, accidents that I was in. But right now, whatever it is that you're looking for, they've got it. If you're looking for new vehicles, well, there is a Texas-sized selection on the lot as we speak. Over 150 vehicles out on the dealership and ready to drive home today. Dozens of Sierra trucks on the lot right now. Qualified buyers can get 2.9% financing on 2023 GMC Sierra trucks. Qualified buyers can also get 3.9% financing on GMC Terrain SUVs or the entire lineup of Buick SUVs in stock. And there's not a better truck on the road right now than the GMC Sierra, offering best-in-class towing, unsurpassed strength, premium comfort for a limited time. Get 2.9% financing and no payments for 90 days. So if you're looking to buy new, there's just a couple of the options for you. But they've also got 80 quality pre-owned cars and trucks in stock, many of them under $20,000. So if you're looking for a pre-owned vehicle, they've got quality rides to drive home today, or perhaps you're just wanting to get your car fixed up, drive it a little bit longer. Well, their award-winning service department is standing by to keep you on the road as well. So go to the website, richardcar.com, to see their service specials and set an appointment for quick and reliable service. For 23 years in Central Texas, they built a reputation as the people you can count on for your automotive needs. Richard Carr, run by proud Central Texans. Log on to richardcar.com today. Call now or go see them now off Highway 6 at the Imperial exit.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
How did Edward Jones become one of the biggest financial service companies in the world? By not acting that way. Financial strategies, one-on-one advice, it's a big difference. And that's why Brad Wilson, your Edward Jones financial advisor, makes sense of investing. Experience the difference for yourself. Brad Wilson, 250 Sharon Drive in Woodway, 254-776-4337. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Hey, this is Bryce Petty, former starting quarterback and two-time Big 12 champion, and I know firsthand the importance of being in top shape both on and off the field. So listen up, men. If you're feeling beat down day in and day out and looking for that high-performance edge that separates the men from the boys, then look no further than the Petty Clinic Low T in Waco. Petty Clinic is a comprehensive men's healthcare clinic with an atmosphere catering to men. Board-certified Dr. Kent Petty has a special interest in offering the highest quality medical care to men of all ages. Some of the services offered include screening and treatment for low testosterone or thyroid, infertility, high blood pressure, diabetes, high cholesterol, sleep apnea, while offering comprehensive wellness exams and complete men's health lab panels. High performance men, remember, it's not just a Petty thing. This is Bryce Petty, encouraging you to reach out and Google search Petty Clinic Low T or go to pettycliniclowt.com and get your complimentary lab screening today.
When we moved to Texas, we were like fish out of water. We didn't know anyone in our neighborhood until our Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent came to the house. She was so helpful and reassuring, a friendly face with that Texan hospitality I'd heard about. When we purchased a Texas Farm Bureau insurance policy, we knew we were making the right choice. We knew our family would be protected.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLean County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Waco Custom Marketplace is your hometown grocery store with a full-service butcher shop and bakery. Hi, this is David Smoak. The butcher shop can take your customized orders for seafood, pork, and poultry and custom cut your favorite steaks from bacon-wrapped fillets to T-bone to bone-in ribeyes. Cut specifically the way you want. They have Norwegian salmon fillets, catfish fillets, sliced ham or turkey and lunch meat, variety of cheese available, and several options of sausage links. Fresh chicken breast or whole chickens, sliced bacon, pork chops, ground beef, marinated beef, and chicken fajitas, and always large briskets available, plus fresh vegetables. So the great product, customer service, and family tradition of the Bauer family continues at Waco Custom Marketplace, open Monday through Saturday. A full-service butcher shop and bakery available. Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco, or WacoCustomMarketplace.com.
Welcome back to Sikkim 365 Radio.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
Dennis Dodd, CBS Sports. We've had him on a lot, not just because of realignment, but also many things college football. Dennis, thanks for your time this afternoon with Paul Craig, and I'm David Smoak. So if, in fact, Oklahoma, Texas leave early, whatever those exit fees, either then or the next year, is going to help pay back those who gave in a little bit as far as their revenue to the incoming 4?
Yeah, I mean, the 8 schools, not counting Texas and Oklahoma, voted last year 8-0 with 2 abstaining to contribute to those 4 schools' entry at a 40% rate of the Big 12 revenue split, which was $42.6 million in the last couple of years. They're getting about $18 to $19 million in the next 2 years. That was negotiated. That was a condition of those 2 schools coming to the league. But Fox and ESPN weren't going to pay any more for the contract. Frankly, nor should they have for those 4 schools. So it had to come from within. And those 4 schools are out, $16 million about 20% of the revenue they would get the next 2 years.
Dennis, do you think that there is any more movement towards this? I mean, it seems to have stalled, but that just means we haven't heard about it. But do you think that once we get the schedule released in a couple weeks, which they say will be in a couple weeks, but we'll start hearing more about what the plans are post 1 year of a 14-team league?
Yeah, I thought it had really gained momentum a couple of weeks ago when I was in Los Angeles for the championship game, and that turned out not to be the case. I have been told the time is running out. Texas and Oklahoma would have to give notice that they're leaving 18 months in advance. We are beyond that point of July 1st, 2024. That's not to say it couldn't be negotiated after that point, which we're 20 days past right now, to figure in 18 months. But I'm just told that it's put or shut up time to do it. And I think there's momentum from the Big 12 to do it, but it's going to have to be the right number from Texas and Oklahoma.
So the amount of money that we're discussing, if Texas and Oklahoma leave early, 23-24, not 24-25, which is at the end of the grant of right, not the grant of right, or the end of the TV deal. I saw your figure could be as much as $168 million. I remember early on, Dennis, there were thoughts that it could be $80 million apiece. Is that from a different set of dollars compared to what you're mentioning with 168?
Well, that 168 basically equals 2 years worth of revenue. Should they leave? So that's basically it. That's $168 million. That does not count negotiating, getting out of the grant of rights with these schools. I think I've seen the contract they're bound to for 99 years from the time they signed it. So that would have to be negotiated. I'm told that in these situations, when both parties are motivated to make a move, that number can be reached at about 60% of its maximum. So that's where you get sort of the $16 million then for each school who put in money. They would be made whole, basically. At least it's not gain money. So that's where that comes from. Those numbers are just kind of funny money right now,
right?
Because I think that's what they're negotiating. How much does the Big 12 want, and how much are those schools willing to pay?
So, Dennis, do you think it's just strictly a financial hurdle that's preventing this from just going ahead and moving on into separate directions? Is that the basis of
there's another significant part of this. Fox would have to be made whole.
Right.
Because they're the ones that are going to miss Texas and Oklahoma from a contract that they are already paying, obviously big dollars for, $42.6 million in concert with ESPN over the last 2 years of the deal. And they've already been very adamant about, we're not going to let them go just to be nice. We need something in return. Now, one of the things in return would maybe be a set of games, non-conference games in the future featuring Texas and Oklahoma that would be played in Big 12 stadiums. I don't know if there'd be much money involved in that to enhance the contract, but it would help the Big 12 strength of schedule and really help the contract in general going forward. But they have to be compensated in some sort of way. And I was told early on, by people in the industry, there's probably not enough games that you can even think of that would make up for the loss of Texas, Oklahoma. But if they're only going to be in one more year, maybe there is a finite number that there is to go there.
And whatever these termination exit, whatever these fees eventually are called or what they are, every bit of that, 100% of that, you say, will go to the original 8 who are staying, correct?
Whatever fee is negotiated, yes, will go back to the 8, Baylor and the 7-Up. That, they were the ones that voted to take money out of their income to fund the other schools. And another piece of this that I think is significant, after those first 2 years and the new contract begins for the Big 12 with the 4 new schools in 2025, they will immediately get a full share, which is not always the case. I don't think West Virginia did when it came in. I know that Rutgers didn't. They went to the Big 10. That was a period of years. They still might not get a full share in the Big Ten. So that's rather rare when you bring in 4 teams like that. But that's what they negotiated. That's what they're going to get. And that contract averages $31.6 million per team. And probably, you're asking now why is it so much smaller than the current deal? Well, it's not. It's more. When you add in the all-in figure, which includes NCAA tournament revenue, college football playoff revenue, bowl revenue, the Big 12 thinks it can get up close to $50 million per school going forward. And that would be significant because that would be more than they're making now with Texas and OU.
That's the just happy to be here fee at Rutgers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. What do you want to pay us? Yeah, that's fine. Whatever. Yeah. We'll go.
Yeah. Dennis, when it comes down to them leaving for a year, the Big 12 has taken long enough to get this schedule out. Could this schedule that we see this year be a total one-off and then they restart it again in the year that Texas and Oklahoma would be now gone?
Yeah, I mean, it could be. And look, we're not late in getting the schedule. I just noticed that the Pac-12 put theirs out this week, and the others will follow soon enough. But I think there's that, and I think there's the fact that I think there's a lot of, I don't know how to put it, egos and a lot of toes to be stepped on where, Texas has to play at Houston. I was told that they will. I don't have that officially. Texas wants no part of playing in Houston. I don't have to tell you why. Oklahoma, so they have to go to Cincinnati. And that's part of why they won out. They made it very clear to Brent Yormark shortly after he took office that they don't want to play those 4 schools. They just, for whatever reason, they look down their nose, whatever. They want to get to the SEC as soon as possible. But, yeah, I mean, I think that's going to be high drama to see when that Big 12 conference comes out to see who plays who.
Yeah, I think that both of them need to play all 4 of the incoming schools and maybe sacrifice a couple of the traditional rivalries. I mean, my God, they're the ones leaving. And again, it's going to be a give and take or whatever. Is the reason the schedule is delayed, or at least whatever it's called, because they don't know about whether Texas and Oklahoma will be back next year?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we know the membership for this year. We know the 14 that are going to be in this year. And it may be just a piece of, okay, until this revenue thing, this early exit thing is done or is dropped dead, there's no use in putting out the schedule. Let's create a positive, because those schedule releases are usually a net, publicity thing for any conference who does that. They put out their release and who plays who, and they're going to get a bump on it, whatever. It's going to be a really cool season with Texas and OU. Think about it. Mm-hmm. With Texas trying to find its way, with Oklahoma trying to find its way, who's going to be the power in the new Big 12 or powers, TCU coming off a championship game appearance. That's going to be really fun to see. And what I just mentioned, who is Texas and Oklahoma going to be made to play and where? So I don't think they want that as a distraction before and if they get early exit.
Dennis, what are your thoughts about Kendall Briles to TCU?
I think it's great. I mean, it's just another ascension for his career. You lose a Garrett Riley. I think that's a huge blow. But Kendall Briles is one of the most respected offensive coordinators in the game, and I think he's proved it. Carrying on his dad's concepts is very quietly being imitated all over the country. Obviously, a lot was written and said about Mike Leach, but Art Briles, for better or worse, learned a lot from Mike Leach as well. So I think Kendall has spread that on. So TCU, I think, will just continue to hum offensively as long as Sonny's there and now Kendall Briles.
Do you feel like that because of the year that Dykes had at TCU that there's blowback? You've seen it, read it, we've heard it. Do you feel like Sonny has enough goodwill that he was, hey, this is who I want, this is who we're going to take, and we're going to weather the storm no matter what people might say about Kendall? And TCU being one of those that was probably pointing the finger as much at Baylor as anybody.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I've thought that since the beginning. A part of me was, why didn't more stick to Kendall? I'm not making accusations. I'm just wondering. And he's not the only former assistant coach at Baylor who's out there. But you're right. Now he's going to a Big 12 school, one that was accusatory. And questions have to be asked at TCU why they're doing this, and we know why. They want to win, and Kendall's proven. But with everything else going on in college athletics right now, questions about Kendall Briles' culpability from 6-7 years ago, I think is pretty minor. And yeah, is Sonny going to get who he wants? Absolutely, at this point, yeah.
Dennis, as we enter the offseason, there's a lot of storylines that start to spark back up, and that includes the realignment front. And I was just curious, with Kevin Warren now moving on, how much of a seismic shift in the way the Big Ten is operated, or maybe what the future looks like, and what people thought the future might look like changes because somebody else will now be in charge of the Big Ten?
Well, I've already said kiddingly to Brett Yormark, well, you're now first in line for the West Coast. He didn't answer. He just kind of smiled. But I think I'll answer it this way. I think the presidents and ADs in the Big Ten have gotten tiresome of Kevin Warren's push for the West Coast schools. Whether that was the right thing to do or not, they just didn't think it was. And, that wasn't going to get done. And maybe that's the reason he left, although a lot of us think he was headed to the NFL in some capacity anyway. I just didn't think it would be after 3 years. So, long story short, the Big Ten stands pat. They have no interest in doing anything else. They don't want to go to the West Coast. It's going to be hard enough to assimilate USC and UCLA, and I think that story is yet to be written of what they're going to do about these minor sports who are going to have to spend a week out on the road, 3,000 miles away playing minor sports. And football and basketball you can figure out. But these other sports, it's going to be really weird. It's never been done before. So, no, I think they're the Big Ten standing back.
What are your thoughts? And we mentioned the Big 12 schedule, but the Pac-12 still has not yet released their media deal. Do you feel like that that's a bad thing? Or do you feel like it doesn't matter as long as they announce it at some point here pretty soon? Or what's going on there?
Yeah, I think it's not good that they've gone this long now. Look, they could do it tomorrow and everything's fine, but the contract runs out next year, and typically you see something signed already. The Big 12, again, got in line ahead of the Pac-12 years in advance and did a new deal. No, I don't think it's good. I'm really, and I'm not the only one. I've written about it. I don't know what kind of deal they're going to get when there's not that much Tier 1 content out there. And by Tier 1, I'm talking about USC, UCLA, Texas, Oklahoma, that sort of Tier 1 content that someone will pay for. The speculation in the industry is there's going to be a lot of Pac-12 games in that new deal on streaming. That may be good in the future. I think it's bad in the present because you're adding a layer. This sounds really simple, but there's a certain amount of people who we might have Netflix, but you have to press that extra button to know where you're going, to get to the streaming, to want to see the game. The advantage that the NFL has with Amazon right now is that they have a deal that the games that are on Thursday night are seen in the local market. So I'm in Kansas City. If the Chiefs are on, I don't have to have it streaming set up. I can watch them on a local station. Also, all those NFL games are seen in restaurants and bars. That won't be the case with the Pac-12. So it's thought to be like an 80% streaming play, and then ESPN picking up maybe some late night games in that late window. After 10 o'clock at night, those late starts on the West Coast. And there's a lot of not speculation, but a lot of talk that they won't get much money for it. And I've already written this, it's not really about them getting as much or more as the Big 12. The Big 12 have a vast advantage in distribution. They're all on linear. They're on Fox and ESPN. Everybody has that. Streaming hasn't hit yet. If they're 80% of their content is on streaming, their ADs and presidents are going to lose their minds because of recruiting, because of visibility, because of everything. So that's yet to be determined. And you're absolutely right, Smokey. It's getting late for them.
Dennis, thank you for your time. We appreciate it very much. From CBS Sports, Dennis Dodd. Early exits for Texas, Oklahoma could help Big 12 repay members that agreed to diluted revenue upon expansion for the incoming 4 teams.
Yeah, a lot of good stuff there, and very interesting to hear, the Big Ten side of being a little bit over the California push, the West Coast push by Kevin Warren. It's like, but he did it though, right? Like he made this move and then he left town, and now we'll see what the follow-up to it is. And I agree with him on the Kendall Briles thing. And like I think I've said every day that we've talked about that, coaching-wise and last 7 years and all that, like that's absolutely, the right move, and it makes a lot of sense. It's just simply the hypocrisy that is the hard thing to swallow. That's it. That's the part that is just tough for people who know what a few years ago was like. That's the part that's hard to wrap your head around.
Imagine him.
Well, yeah, of course, yeah. I mean, I'm sure, but that, to be very clear on where we stand there, that's the part that's just like, come on now. But all the rest of it makes absolute sense. But yeah, there's the Pac-12 TV deal and all that. That's going to be very, very interesting. And man, the storylines never stop.
How about this on the chat room? Austin, Texas. What's the best of the 4 incoming teams, programs is football? And there were 4 people who answered, and everybody named one of the 4. Like UCF from Clint. Paxton said BYU. TJ said Cincinnati. Barry mentioned somebody else. There was another school. Houston was in there. And then one said that Houston may be the weakest of the 4. Who knows?
Based on last year, you'd say UCF would be 1, right? And then probably Cincy 2, and then BYU, and then Houston. But I'm saying that without knowing that. Maybe Houston above BYU because BYU had a rough year, and I can't remember their records right off the top of my head. But UCF they had the best year last year for sure.
We're now joined by Grayson Grundhafer, Sikkim365.com recruiting analyst, football analyst, also co-host with Craig on the Bearcast, joins us on 365 Sports. So Grayson is a walk-on quarterback, but he obviously has some skins in the wall in Martinez. Your thoughts about – I got a note from Josh Cameron's mother that thinks that he's a pretty good player. Yes, it's Shapen. Yes, it's Sawyer Robertson. But your thoughts about who they ended up with in the quarterback room that was empty or almost empty just about a week or so ago?
Absolutely. This was a really, really good pickup, I think, for this Baylor program. And this is a guy that they've been talking to for a while. I know I had talked to RJ for a little bit earlier in the week, and he had kind of been trying to figure things out as far as his recruitment goes, because he had, a couple offers from FCS schools such as Incarnate Word, which Incarnate Word's been putting up some crazy numbers at the quarterback position with Lindsey Scott and Cam Ward the last 3 years. So he had that offer. And then Louisiana Tech was his group of 5 offer, the FBS offer that he had as well. And instead of taking those, he decided to go try to walk on and compete at Baylor. And I think there's a few things that go into this. I think the first one is, what you saw last year when Baylor decided to go with with Blake Shapen over Gary Bohannon. It showed kind of this trend by Baylor to play the guy that they feel like is the best. And so I think for RJ, that's probably very appealing, right? Just the simple fact that, hey, if I go in there and I'm the best quarterback, I'm going to win the job. And so I think that makes it more of an appealing situation. But this guy can play. I mean, he's not the biggest guy. He's only like 6 foot, 185 pounds. But he was the Big Sky All-Freshman Player of the Year his freshman year. Only played 19 games so far during his career and has thrown for over 4,590 yards, 30 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, also has 13 touchdowns on the ground. So he comes in with a lot of production. Now, I know it's at the FCS level, but still, you don't find a lot of guys with this kind of production who end up being walk-ons on your football team. He's got to be one of the best walk-ons in the entire country. I mean, that's a great thing for Baylor.
Grayson, how many scholarships do you think would be? Do you think there'll be more open after spring, or do you think that there is less fluid movement when that ends after all they've done here recently?
So I think there's 2 things to that question. But the first part of it is, yes, I do think that there are going to be more guys who enter the transfer portal. A big part of that is you get to go through spring ball and you kind of get to figure out, hey, this is where I'm at on the depth chart. This is who's in front of me. This is how much, better I have to be in order to see any playing time this year. You're going to see that kind of across the country with teams who are kind of trying to figure out, okay, who's going to be left here? Who am I actually going to have on the roster going into the next season? And I think that's going to be the case at Baylor. So I do believe there will be more transfers that enter the portal for sure during that time period. And then you'll start to see the portal open up again during the summer when teams go and try to recruit guys. But I would also say I think the other factor that's in play here is that during this first transfer portal period, you had a lot of guys with a lot of production, right? So you were finding guys who are very productive at other schools, but decide the situation wasn't the right fit for them, or wanted to maybe move from group of 5 to power 5 or different things like that. This next transfer portal session is going to be more about, I think, finding guys who are depth pieces on certain rosters who you feel like can either be a really quality depth piece or a starter for your roster. So I think there takes a little more evaluation in that process because, you know, Baylor went out and got Mike Smith, for instance, who had 85 tackles at Liberty. Like, I don't think you're going to find guys who had 85 tackles a year ago who enter the portal during this second time period. So it's going to be more about, you know, kind of what you thought about this guy going into his high school recruitment and going into college as opposed to proven on the field production.
What do you feel like they have yet to address?
I think the answer for me here is cornerback. And I know they have Isaiah Dunston, and I think he's going to be a very quality player for them. But he's not the most proven commodity. And so you look at the cornerback position, and they really struggled all year, really, especially in man coverage. They essentially had to revert to zone for a lot of the season because they simply couldn't guard man-to-man really at all. And that was not just the cornerbacks, but also in the slot as well. They just really struggled in that regard. So I really thought they would take 2 cornerbacks this cycle. That has not happened. I, as of right now, don't anticipate that happening unless something, you know, unforeseen does occur. I think they could address that in the summer. I'll also say, you know, I am a little surprised that they haven't looked more at the safety position. I think it's got to be one of 2 things. Either Matthew Pallage wants to see the guys on his roster, see them compete in the spring, and then figure out where the specific needs are, or they just feel really good about the guys they have in that room. And, I mean, if that's the case, that means really good things. But for the most part, it's a very unproven group, and a group that outside of Devin Lemire hasn't played a ton of football at the college level. So those 2 positions are the 2 that I'm really, you know, keying in on. I think on the offensive side, the only one that I can really think of is the center position because as of right now, the starting center is probably Timothy Dawn. And, I mean, I think he's going to be a very good player for Baylor in the future, but he's still only a redshirt freshman. And typically that takes some time to develop into a Power 5 offensive lineman. So I could see them addressing the center spot as well in the summer. And that's actually a position that I thought they would have addressed during this cycle, just didn't have enough room.
Grayson Grundhafer with us, 365 Sports. This Baylor Athletics segment brought to you by Richard Carr Motors, people you can count on.
Grayson, your thoughts on A.J. Stewart, the big move there to fill the spot left by Justin Johnson when he made the move out to Lubbock. They needed a running backs coach, and they look out to Corvallis in Oregon State. I know there's some crossover there with Jeff Grimes previously, and I was certainly impressed by the job that he did with Damian Martinez this past year, and prior to that, B.J. Baylor. But your thoughts on Stewart and also hiring a special teams coordinator as well.
Right, and I'm very excited by this hire, and mainly, I guess my main reasoning for it is just the simple fact that Dave Aranda targeted this guy, figured out that he was going to be the guy, and not only did he bring him in to be the running backs coach, not only did he trust him with that, he also made him assistant head coach, which I think speaks volumes about what A.J. Stewart kind of means to this program going forward and kind of the expectations for him, right? That he's going to come in and be an immediate impact type of coach. And to be honest, he's got a great situation with the running back room the way that it is at Baylor. When you're talking about Richard Reese and Quaylen Jones in the mix, and you're talking about young guys like Bryson Washington is there, and he's a guy who I think could come in and provide an immediate spark as well in that room. And so, and then of course Dominic Richardson, who we haven't seen play in a Baylor uniform yet, but he's the transfer from Oklahoma State. So a lot of really high quality players already on the campus. So he's going to come in and get the opportunity to mold those guys and You mentioned BJ at Baylor. The year that he had, I mean, he was phenomenal. He was all Pac-12 first team. If you get a guy like that at Baylor, that means they're going to have a lot of success. And then you mentioned true freshman Damian Martinez as well. So I'm very encouraged by this hire. I think that this is going to end up being a really good one. But I will say, Coach Stewart has some big shoes to fill because I know a lot of people really like Juice Johnson. I was a big Juice Johnson guy as well. Felt like he did a great job during his time at Baylor. But I think Baylor and Dave Aranda especially went out and found a guy who I think really could come in and kind of run with that position and essentially be a perfect replacement for Juice Johnson. Now, as far as the other side, you mentioned Hancock, the special teams coach, the new special teams coach. I feel like this was something they probably needed. They really struggled last year, kicking and punting and just special teams in general. So I think addressing that with a guy that you really trust to come in and fix that situation, I think it speaks volumes to not only the emphasis that Dave Aranda wants to put on special teams, but also kind of maybe a position where they were lacking that they feel like they can really improve going into next year. So I found that to be a very interesting hire by Baylor.
Grayson, do you think they'll do anything else at wide receiver?
Good question. Coming into kind of that first transfer portal wave, I would have told you they were for sure going to take 2 wide receivers. Now, they ended up landing pretty much the top guy on the board with Ketron Jackson. So you filled a need, and you filled the need with a really high-quality guy. And so maybe they're sitting there thinking, okay, we got Ketron, went out and got Jake Roberts, who's a very high-quality tight end. So maybe they feel like that satisfies that need in the passing game. And that's potentially what happened. Or, maybe they decide to wait and see maybe what happens in the summer. See if there's a guy who really flashes in the portal, and maybe you go land that guy. Or maybe during the spring, someone really takes a huge step on the Baylor depth chart, and then you don't have to go and add someone. That's possible as well, because as we know, that position is filled with a lot of talent. It's just we keep talking about the talent, and a lot of times that talent hasn't translated, or the guys are too young in the room for it to translate. So maybe we'll hear news this spring, or we'll see it this spring, that, hey, guys like Javon Gibson or Armani Winfield have taken a huge jump, and therefore they don't really need to go out and get a transfer. I think either one of those things that I listed there could be kind of what's going on in that wide receiver room right now.
Grayson, thank you. Last year they didn't bring anybody in at wide receiver because they felt like they wanted to give those in the program a chance to play, an opportunity to play, and it didn't quite work out that way, but it's another year for a lot of them. I think Winfield has a chance to be incredibly good. We'll see if that happens. Thanks for your time, Grayson Grundhaper, 365 Sports, Sikkim 365 Radio football and recruiting analyst. John Wilner, then we break. Pac-12 has fired 2 senior executives for failing to report overpayments by media distribution partner. We'll try to get more on that.
I've got some stuff on it.
I know. I know you do, and we'll get into that as well. Paul threw us a text or a tweet or a quote on Amazon, the Pac-12, and much more, and he'll get more on that a little bit later on. But coming up, Max Olson, theathletic.com, yesterday put out an article on the transfer portal. What have we learned? A lot. And that is next on 365 Sports.
Kick off 2023 with a bang at the Start Something New sales event. Get up to $2,500 in total values and 1.9% for 72 months on all new 2023 Jeep Grand Cherokee Limiteds. That's right, 1.9% for 72 months plus rebates. Deals are available across our entire inventory. Remember, if you don't see what you want, we can build your custom dream vehicle today. The Start Something New sales event is happening now at Allen Samuels in Waco.
The 4 o'clock hour is sponsored by Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store, specializing in custom jewelry and repair, all in-house.
I hate my job, but I don't mind getting up in the morning. I dread each day, but I can't wait to get out of bed. You ask me why, and what I'll say to you is true. Well, you can get breakfast tacos at Rudy's Barbecue. Scrambled eggs and brisket, they ain't fooling around. Salsa Drap Son, they're the best in town. Barbecue for breakfast, yes, it's true. Put a smile on your morning at Rudy's Barbecue. Next in line.
Don Humidor, your home with a 48-foot walk-in humidor with the elite cigar brands from around the world, including the #1 cigar of the year, Aging Room Cuatro Nicaragua. Plus, they have the great brands like Macanudo and Artur Fuente, Rocky Patel, Aston, and so much more. CBD, great for sore muscles, aches and pains, sleep, Vita Dreams, and anxiety, mild depression, general health and wellness. Their staff very knowledgeable on the subject. If anyone is curious about CBD, ask Carol and Ashley. Don Humidor in the Townwest Shopping Center off Valley Mills in Waco.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit Marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
Baylor Scott and White, Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, hand or wrist injuries, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trusts. Baylor Scott and White, Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
Let Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
Boots add protection. Good boots help you climb better and move forward faster. And when your son or daughter steps into the boots of a U.S. Army officer, they also learn how to lead. In these boots, they'll gain more confidence with expert training in one of more than 150 occupational specialties. In these boots, they'll stand a little taller and lead a team with diverse backgrounds and areas of expertise to successfully accomplish whatever challenge comes next. In these boots, they'll earn respect with valuable experience from day one that will give them solid footing for success into the future. Highly qualified candidates who earn a spot on our team can receive comprehensive health care coverage, college tuition assistance, and a bonus of up to $40,000. See all the things your son or daughter can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
Welcome back to 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com. It's time for our weekly segment with Max Olson of The Athletic, brought to you by Pioneer Steel and Pipe, where customer service is their main focus, and best in metal, steel, and pipe for large or small projects, with 2 locations in Waco and Bryan. Family owned and operated since 1943.
Working on Max.
Here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
You start bringing us back. I just forget, all right? You start bringing us back.
All right.
I'll do that. Graham Coffey earlier today, Alabama picked up a former player, an inside linebacker from Georgia, Tresman Marshall. Played in 14 of 15 games for Georgia. Didn't put up a lot of stats, but 13 tackles and a pick, and said he was kind of a rising type player. So Georgia has him going to the transfer portal, and Alabama plucks him up. It's like, okay, here are the king and the queen just sharing whatever they have as far as all the royalties. And so that's an interesting story with Alabama picking up Tresman Marshall. We're now joined by Max Olson, theathletic.com on 365 Sports. Max, great story yesterday, and I told you that in a text. What we have learned from college football's first transfer portal window and what comes next. So what have we learned?
Well, it's I appreciate y'all having me on as always. It's been
fun, exhausting, but fun over the past 45 days to kind of track how many guys are going in, where are they going. Right now we're over 70% of the Power 5 players who are in the portal in this cycle have committed. So clearly, as you guys have seen, this is just such a fast-moving thing, each of these recruitments. Nowadays, like if a kid's taking a visit somewhere, he's probably going there. It's just they feel like, especially the mid-year guys, you have to you got to figure out where you're going and do it very quickly. And, over that portal window, you wondered how many guys would go in. And just because you hear on the personnel side just how overwhelming they think it's going to be. And it was. I mean, it was close to 1,300 players went in over a 45-day period. And so a lot of players moving around. Obviously, the quarterbacks and some of the premium players really get a lot of the conversation. But as you guys have seen with Baylor too, like I think the new normal now is a lot of players leaving your program at the end of the season and a lot of players coming into your program going into the spring.
Max, they're going to have to do something with the calendar because it's just too much at once for anybody. And I know that coaches get paid a lot of money to do this, but even still, it doesn't seem practical at this point to keep going exactly this way, does it?
Well, it's interesting because I don't know what the easy fix is there. I mean, I think that you certainly understand the frustration about high school recruiting, portal recruiting, full games and coaching changes all going on at the same time in December. But I think that there's still to the recruits that want to be done with their recruitment and want to sign and want to be early enrollees and all that. Like it's still beneficial to be able to sign in December and not have to wait till February and all that. So you kind of wonder. I don't know that like you talk to the AFCA folks, they're like maybe we should have like a December 1st signing day, but I don't think doing signing day in the middle of all the coaching changes makes sense either. So you kind of wonder if will we just go to just February for that? Or is there, a reasonable argument here that there should be a signing period that's in like July or August before the player's senior season? Like, I think the recruiting piece of that, you just kind of wonder what makes sense for the future, but you're right. Like probably tough to sustain the way we're currently doing it.
Max, do you feel like more programs have kind of found their footing, or do you think the complaints have grown louder in regards to what you were just discussing?
In which part?
Like as far as do you think that there's as much consternation and angst over this? Is it still growing as far as the portal and the dates and the openings and all of that, or have more people started to kind of finally found their footing, or is it still growing the we need change crowd?
Yeah, I mean, I think that as frustrated as some staffers and coaches and stuff get about just how December went, it is, like I said, it's just kind of hard to pinpoint, like, here's the perfect way to kind of clean that up, because this is just, this is like, there's just a lot of change in the sport every off season now. And so, and as much as a coach might say, man, it'd be nice to go coach in the NFL and get away from all this stuff and the NIL and tampering and all this kind of stuff, like there's just not that many jobs out there for folks. So, you get used to kind of the annual complaining about this is wrong. It's very frustrating. It's not how it used to be and stuff like that. But like when you talk to folks about like what are the solutions here, I think that's probably gives people even more angst. Is you wish there was just kind of a magic way to kind of redo all of this. And in college football world, there's kind of not. There's not an easy way to do. I think the portal window, you probably could argue that it helps because you don't have as many players going in, at all times throughout the year. But certainly to cram, 1,300 players becoming available in basically 1 month, there's a lot of benefits and there's a lot of stress that comes with that too.
And of course, the transfer portal, there's NIL, there's bidding, there's whatever you mentioned, even tampering, that's happening. I heard a couple of minutes from Troy Dannon, he's the AD at Tulane, in an interview during the NCAA convention, where he thinks the money that we hear when it comes to NIL is way out of whack. Not because it's a lot, but because he thinks that those the street agents or whoever are floating it out there like you would see in the NFL with free agency. Is it as bad or high? Not bad. Is it as high, some of these numbers, as we hear?
Well, that's the thing that makes the Jaden Rashada story so fascinating is you'd hear, like $8 million for Nico, the quarterback going in Tennessee. That's like pretty much like the high. Nobody's like paying more than that for a player, you would think, right? But like, so to see Florida actually like put it in writing in a contract that they were going to pay Jaden Rashada $13 million when they didn't have $13 million. That is the part that you're just like, what is going on here? And I know that's an extreme example, but yeah, I think that, you know, on our end of it, we hear lots of rumors about, there's an offer on the table for this much money to this player to transfer and stuff like that. And like, sometimes you can go check with the coaching staff or recruiting staffer and be like, hey, what's going on here? And they're like, no, we don't have that kind of money. That's insane. Like, I think, yeah, in terms of like what you hear, probably like a lot of inflated stuff, some of it real, some of it not. Like, it's just hard, especially on the media side. It's hard for us to really like confirm any of those kind of details and like have a real understanding of like what is a player worth in the portal or what is a high school recruit worth. Like, it's all, yeah, it all just seems kind of fishy and you don't really even know who's setting the market right now.
Max, what did you think of Spencer Sanders to Ole Miss?
You know, I was pretty surprised, honestly. I think that the addition of Walker Howard, the LSU transfer, that was a big get for Ole Miss, and it made a lot of sense. They needed to bring in competition for Jackson Dart. They had lost Luke Altmaier, their backup, who's going to Illinois now, and so you knew they were on the market. But to take Spencer Sanders as well, that I think that tells you a lot about how Lane Kiffin feels about his quarterback situation. That I think that Dart turned it over too many times this season. Wasn't as accurate as Matt Corral was. I think he probably feels like they need more competition either to get Jackson Dart better and really push him to take a big step going into his junior season, or you feel like Spencer Sanders is kind of that 1-year rental that can maybe take your offense to the next level. It feels in a lot of ways, guys, like similar to the Adrian Martinez conversation we had a year ago. So it's like Spencer Sanders, I think, is very very determined right now, very confident he can go in and prove something at Ole Miss and win that job and win over that team. And, when he's been good, he's been good. And certainly, like, if he can stay healthy and avoid turnovers and stuff like that, I think he has a chance to be productive in that offense with the pieces they've got coming back. But, what a fascinating three-way quarterback battle there. And you would think that the way things are now, not all of those guys are going to make it and stay.
Max, what do you think the market looks like for Jaden Rashada a second time around?
Less than $13 million, I think, is probably the expectation. I know there's a report that he's going to visit Arizona State. I think that one makes a lot of sense just in terms of his connection. He was being recruited by Kenny Dillingham to Oregon during his recruiting process, and that would be a big splash for Arizona State, considering that their quarterback situation, as much as they want to pursue a guy like Dylan Raiola over the next year, they're working with Drew Pine and maybe not a very proven quarterback room. So I could see Arizona State making a lot of sense. I think his dad played there.
You did?
Probably yeah, I think so. Washington and some of those kind of schools, like probably some of the Pac-12 schools, those are the ones that you'd be looking at right now for Jaden Rashada. And honestly, guys, when you talk about that stuff, like, I just feel for the kid. I do. I think there's a lot of shady characters in this story. And people who are trying to make a buck off the kid. And certainly, like, on the Florida side of this, a lot of people want to take credit when the kid commits, and then nobody wants to blame when the deal falls apart. And, it's not the kid's fault. If your son was promised $13 million to go play quarterback for a school, like, you would take it. And then you would be, really upset when you find out that was fake or that the school had no intention of doing that. And so, I hope he finds a place where he's really happy and has a chance to, be productive.
Yeah, Max, the best I can tell this happened is they knew that Florida, they knew that Miami has a guy like John Rui who can give a bunch of money, who's done it and has that. And then in order to get into this bidding, they just went way out over their skis, promising this stuff, thinking like, look, we're the University of Florida. We've got a bunch of big-time donors and a bunch of money we can throw around. We'll get it. And then, by the time it comes time for him to get there, he's got to say, well, you owe me at least $3.5 million this year, so where's that coming from? And then they didn't have it at all because that's a ridiculous amount of money to give to somebody who's not done anything yet.
Yeah, and I haven't seen the contract. I don't know how it was structured, but the fact that they even had a contract is just baffling to me because, like they tried to go terminate it within the first week of December. Like, this is the thing that, and I feel bad for the kids and their parents and like the folks that are like trying to navigate this really like changing world right now is like, you're getting like made these promises to commit to a school. And then as you saw in Florida, like in December, as we approach signing day, it's like, okay, now it's time to tell them the truth. We don't have the money. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's just, and really this is really more for the high end, like the quarterback, recruits. Obviously a big piece of this was that it was a competitive situation and they wanted to get over on Miami by flipping him and basically outbidding them and stuff like that. But like, man, it's just what a messy situation. Like, again, like if it was your kid, like, wouldn't you probably like try to sue him for breach of contract if they made you this promise and stuff like that? Like, it's just, I don't know how you like get out of this, feeling like you got a fair resolution to this. And ultimately the kid is the one who suffers.
By the way, Phil Snow coached at Arizona State when Rashada's father was playing at Arizona State. He had a funny story about he came out one time from pregame in these real colorful shoes, and he was informed, Snow was informed, he can't play with those shoes on. So he had a conversation with Rashada. Took him a while to come out, but eventually he switched the shoes. So there's a little bit of that showmanship in his father. One question, the 15 days in the next opening instead of whatever was 45. Man, that's not very long. I guess players have to make a decision quickly. Have you heard of any schools slow playing anybody that's wanted to enter the transfer portal?
What do you mean by slow playing?
Like the compliance and or signing off. I mean, can a school slow play somebody entering the portal when a deadline's coming up, or would that just create a terrible PR nightmare?
Yeah, I think the way that the rule is on this is, so in these windows, you have to notify the school that you wish to be put in the transfer portal, which is just an online database. You have to give them that notification by the end of the deadline to put them in. The school, they can put you in right away, or they can take up to 48 hours to put you in. And so we've seen some cases, since the deadline ended here the other day, like you've still seen some names pop up Thursday, Friday, because they were put in, but the school took their time in putting them in. And so, yeah, I like it's going to be, so we'll probably still see some players. And of course, grad transfers can still go in at any time. And so we'll still continue to see that over the course of the spring. But you're right, the May window is going to be, it's going to be pretty hectic, where these players coming out of spring ball have to make a decision on where they want to be. And certainly I think like probably the portal stuff will slow down here over the next few months, like on the surface, but below the surface,